You know exactly what needs to be done. The path forward is crystal clear in your mind. Yet, day after day, week after week, you find yourself stuck in the same place, making the same promises to yourself that somehow never materialize into action. It's not that you're lazy or incapable. It's something far more insidious, a mental error so deeply embedded in your thinking patterns that it has become invisible to you. And while you consume more information, set more goals, and convince yourself that you're growing, this single error continues to anchor you to mediocrity, silently sabotaging every step toward the success you know you deserve. In the next few minutes, I'm going to expose this hidden barrier that Napoleon Hill identified nearly a century ago. The very same barrier that keeps millions trapped in lives of quiet desperation, even as they believe they're making progress. What you do with this revelation will determine whether you'll continue the cycle of false growth, or finally break through to the life of true achievement and fulfillment that has always been within your reach. The most dangerous trap is the one you don't know you're in. Every day, you consume information, read books, watch videos, take courses, all in the name of self-improvement. You feel good about yourself. You feel like you're growing. This feeling of progress creates a powerful dopamine response in your brain, giving you the satisfaction of achievement without having actually achieved anything. It's the mental equivalent of junk food immediate gratification that leaves you nutritionally starved. Napoleon Hill, after studying 500 of the world's most successful people for over 20 years, identified this as one of the most common barriers to success. He called it mistaking motion for action. Motion makes you feel productive. Action produces results. And the gap between these two is where dreams go to die. Look honestly at your life right now. How many books have you read without implementing their wisdom? How many courses have you taken without applying their strategies? How many goals have you set only to watch them fade away under the weight of daily routine? This isn't just a question, it's a mirror. And what it reflects might be uncomfortable to acknowledge. The choice facing you now isn't whether to learn more, it's whether you'll break the cycle of consumption without implementation that has held you captive for so long. Will you continue to fool yourself with the illusion of growth? Or will you demand real progress measured in results, not intentions? Success leaves clues. When Napoleon Hill spent decades interviewing the most successful people of his time, from Andrew Carnegie to Thomas Edison, Henry Ford to Alexander Graham Bell, he wasn't just collecting interesting stories. He was meticulously documenting the operating system of achievement. What he discovered was revolutionary. Success isn't accidental or mystical, it follows specific, repeatable patterns of thought and action. The principle that emerged most clearly from his research was this: your dominant thoughts directly shape your physical reality, not as some mystical law of attraction, but through the practical mechanism of focused attention leading to consistent action. When Hill stated, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve," he wasn't offering a platitude. He was describing the causal relationship between thought patterns and real-world results that he had observed in every single high achiever he studied. What separates those who achieve greatness from those who merely dream about it isn't talent, education, or opportunity. It's their ability to align their thoughts with specific goals and then translate those thoughts into immediate, persistent action. While others are thinking about what they want, successful people are taking the necessary steps to obtain it, no matter how uncomfortable those steps might be. This principle isn't just theory, it's been validated by thousands of success stories across generations. Take Thomas Edison, who failed over 10,000 times before inventing a functional light bulb. When asked about these failures, he famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." His dominant thoughts weren't focused on failure, but on inevitable success through persistent action. His mental framework rejected the very concept of failure, seeing each attempt as merely another step toward solution. The question isn't whether this principle works, the evidence is overwhelming. The question is, are you willing to apply it with the same level of commitment as those who have already achieved what you're still dreaming about? The mental error dragging you down is as subtle as it is devastating. False attribution of causality. You believe that knowledge leads to success, that understanding a concept means you've mastered it, that being familiar with principles of achievement somehow translates to embodying them. This error creates an insidious loop where you continually seek more information rather than implementation, more understanding rather than experience, more planning rather than execution. Napoleon Hill observed this pattern repeatedly in those who failed to achieve their potential. They would enthusiastically consume ideas but never convert them into action. They would mistake the map for the journey. They would confuse familiarity with mastery. And most dangerously, they would attribute their lack of progress to needing more information rather than facing the uncomfortable truth. They were avoiding the difficult work of implementation. This mental error manifests in predictable patterns. You read about discipline rather than developing it. You plan elaborate strategies rather than taking simple actions. You perfect theoretical approaches rather than testing imperfect attempts. You wait for motivation rather than creating momentum through action. You seek more knowledge, when what you really need is more courage. The cruel irony is that this pattern feels productive. Each new book, course, or theory gives you the comforting sensation of progress. But it's an illusionary mental sleight of hand where accumulating knowledge substitutes for applying it. As Hill wrote, knowledge is only potential power. It becomes power only when, and if, it is organized into definite plans of action. Are you ready to confront this error in your own thinking? To recognize when you're using learning as a sophisticated form of procrastination? To acknowledge that your problem isn't a lack of knowledge, but a lack of implementation? This recognition is the first step toward breaking free from the cycle that has kept you stagnant despite the feeling of growth. Potential is a double-edged sword. On one side, it represents all you could become. On the other, it represents the burden of unfulfilled promise. The gap between your potential and your current reality isn't just a measure of opportunity, it's a source of quiet psychological torment. You feel it in those moments of late-night honesty, when you compare what you're capable of with what you've actually accomplished. Napoleon Hill recognized this burden in countless individuals who carried the weight of unrealized gifts. He understood that potential without expression doesn't just remain dormant, it actively corrodes your self-image and emotional well-being. The worst of all human ailments, he noted, is not the physical kind, but the mental state of uncertainty. This uncertainty, the perpetual questioning of whether you'll ever become who you're capable of being, extracts a tremendous psychological toll. It manifests as anxiety, as imposter syndrome, as a vague but persistent dissatisfaction with life. You become haunted not by what you've done, but by what you've failed to do. By the books unwritten, the businesses unlaunched, the fitness unachieved, the relationships undeveloped. What makes this burden especially cruel is that those with the greatest potential often suffer the most from its lack of fulfillment. The more capable you are, the more painful the gap between possibility and reality becomes. Your intelligence and talent, the very qualities that should propel you forward, become the measuring stick by which you judge your inadequate progress. The price of potential isn't just the external success you forfeit. It's the internal peace you sacrifice. It's the quiet dignity that comes from knowing you're doing what you're capable of doing, a dignity no amount of planning or learning can provide. You stand at a crossroads right now. Will you continue to carry this burden, adding more knowledge to potential already unfulfilled? Or will you finally commit to paying the price of achievement instead, the price of discomfort, of vulnerability, of possible failure? One path maintains the comforting illusion of future success. The other demands the uncomfortable reality of present action. Which will you choose? Planning feels like progress. It creates the comforting sensation that you're moving forward, mapping your route to success with careful precision. You outline goals, create timelines, design systems, and sketch strategies. You convince yourself that this thoroughness is necessary, that proper preparation prevents poor performance. But, for too many, planning has become not a precursor to action but a substitute for it. Napoleon Hill called this the plan forever execute never syndrome. He observed it in countless individuals who would meticulously craft elaborate plans while postponing the moment of implementation indefinitely. They were always getting ready to get ready, always preparing to begin, always one more detail away from taking the first step. This planning trap operates under the disguise of responsibility. It feels prudent, thorough, and professional. But examine it closely and you'll recognize the fear hiding beneath. Fear of failure. Fear of judgment. Fear of discovering that your best might not be good enough. By perpetually planning, you protect yourself from these possibilities. You maintain the pleasant fantasy of eventual success without risking the painful reality of potential failure. Thomas Edison didn't create the light bulb by perfect planning. He created it through relentless experimentation. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize manufacturing through endless preparation. He did it through bold action and continuous adaptation. The Wright brothers didn't achieve flight by designing flawless blueprints. They achieved it by building and crashing and rebuilding until their contraption finally took to the skies. The most successful people throughout history share a common trait. They prioritize action over perfection. They understand that a flawed plan executed today is infinitely more valuable than a perfect plan executed someday. They know that real-world feedback from action produces more useful information than any amount of theoretical planning. What is one action, no matter how small, that you could take today toward your most important goal? Not tomorrow. Not when conditions are perfect. Today, right now. This isn't just a theoretical question. Your answer, and whether you follow through on it, will reveal whether you're trapped in perpetual planning or ready to join the ranks of those who turn thoughts into things. Scattered focus produces scattered results. When Napoleon Hill interviewed the titans of industry and achievement, he discovered they all shared a singular characteristic, a definite chief aim. Not vague desires, not generalized hopes, not even multiple clear goals, but one primary, specific objective that commanded their attention and organized their efforts. This definite chief aim functions as both compass and filter. It points the direction of your journey and filters out the distractions that would divert you from it. Without it, you become vulnerable to what Hill called the drifter mentality, moving wherever current circumstances push you rather than toward a predetermined destination. The power of a definite chief aim comes from its ability to program your reticular activating system, the part of your brain that determines what you notice and what you ignore. When you establish a clear, specific objective, your mind automatically begins identifying opportunities, resources, and strategies relevant to its achievement. As Hill observed, When your desires are strong enough, you will appear to possess superhuman powers to achieve. But here is where most people fail. They confuse wishes with definite aims. A wish is vague and emotional. An aim is specific and actionable. Financial freedom is a wish. Building a business that generates $10,000 in monthly passive income through real estate investments by December 31st next year is a definite aim. The difference is not semantic, it's fundamental to how your brain processes and pursues objectives. Edwin C. Barnes demonstrated the power of a definite chief aim when he set his sights on becoming Thomas Edison's business partner. Despite having no connections, no special education, and no money, Barnes made this his singular focus. He didn't just wish for this outcome, he committed to it with such clarity and conviction that he eventually achieved exactly what he had envisioned, becoming wealthy in the process. The question that now confronts you is unavoidable. What is your definite chief aim? Not what you wish would happen, not what you'd like to have, but what specific outcome are you willing to commit your full resources toward achieving? The clarity of your answer will determine whether you continue to drift or finally begin to navigate with purpose. No great achievement is ever the product of a single mind working in isolation. Every significant success is the result of combined intelligence, energy, and resources, what Napoleon Hill termed the mastermind alliance. This principle recognizes that power is multiplied, not merely added, when minds work in harmony toward a common objective. The mental error that undermines so many is the belief in the self-made individual, the myth that true achievement comes from independent effort. History contradicts this at every turn. Thomas Edison relied on a team of dedicated experimenters. Henry Ford surrounded himself with experts in specialized fields. Andrew Carnegie attributed his success not to his own brilliance, but to his ability to enlist the service of those more capable than himself in various domains. Hill defined the mastermind as coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony between two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose. Note the key elements: coordination, not just collection; harmony, not just cooperation; and definite purpose, not just mutual benefit. When these elements combine, the result is exponentially greater than the sum of individual efforts. This principle operates on both practical and metaphysical levels. Practically, it allows for division of labor, specialized expertise, and diverse perspectives. Metaphysically, Hill observed that when minds unite in harmony, they seem to access a third mind, a collective intelligence greater than any individual contribution. Yet most people resist this principle. Pride convinces them they should succeed independently. Insecurity makes them hesitant to reveal their goals and challenges to others. Impatience pushes them toward shortcuts rather than building meaningful alliances. And so they struggle alone, deprived of the multiplicative power that comes from minds working in concert. Who are the individuals that should comprise your mastermind alliance? What specific knowledge, resources, or characteristics would complement your own strengths and compensate for your weaknesses? How will you approach these individuals to create not just transactional relationships, but true harmony of purpose? Your willingness to build this alliance to transcend the limitation of individual effort will determine whether your chief aim remains a personal ambition or becomes a realized achievement. The single greatest predictor of ultimate success is not talent, education, or opportunity, it's persistence. The ability to continue moving toward your objective despite failure, rejection, criticism, and temporary defeat separates achievers from dreamers more decisively than any other factor. Napoleon Hill discovered this principle through studying both success and failure. Those who achieved their goals weren't those who avoided obstacles. They were those who refused to be stopped by them. As Hill wrote, before success comes in any man's life, he is sure to meet with much temporary defeat and, perhaps, some failure. When defeat overtakes a man, the easiest and most logical thing to do is to quit. That is exactly what the majority of men do. The mental error that sabotages persistence is misinterpreting the meaning of resistance. When you encounter obstacles, your interpretation of these challenges determines whether you'll persist or abandon your efforts. Most people interpret resistance as evidence they should stop, a sign they're on the wrong path, lacking necessary qualities, or pursuing an impossible goal. Successful individuals interpret the same resistance as evidence they're growing, a necessary part of achievement, a test of their commitment, and an opportunity to develop greater strength. Consider the story of R.U. Darby, a gold miner who stopped drilling just 3 feet away from one of the richest veins of gold in Colorado. After encountering significant hardship, he sold his equipment to a junkman who sought expert advice, continued drilling, and discovered the gold that Darby had nearly reached. The difference wasn't luck, it was persistence. The willingness to continue when every logical reason suggested quitting. This persistence isn't blind stubbornness. It's intelligent determination combined with flexibility in approach. As Hill noted, persistence is to the character of man as carbon is to steel. It's the element that transforms ordinary effort into extraordinary achievement. Every significant goal will test your persistence. You will face moments when continuing seems irrational, when the evidence suggests you should quit, when those around you advise surrender. How you respond in these moments, whether you interpret them as signals to stop or invitations to grow stronger, will determine whether you join the small percentage who convert ambition into achievement or the larger group whose potential remains forever unrealized. Faith is not merely a religious concept, it's a cognitive function essential to significant achievement. Napoleon Hill defined faith as the visualization of and belief in the attainment of desire. It's the ability to see a future reality so clearly that you begin acting as if it were already accomplished, thereby setting in motion the very forces required to bring it into existence. The mental error that undermines this principle is confusing faith with wishful thinking. Wishful thinking is passive and emotional. Faith is active and practical. Wishful thinking says, "I hope this happens." Faith says, "I see this happening, and I am aligning my thoughts and actions with this future reality." This principle manifests in what psychologists now call the self-fulfilling prophecy, the process by which expectations influence behaviors in ways that make those expectations more likely to be confirmed. When you develop unshakable faith in your ability to achieve a specific outcome, you unconsciously adjust your decisions, perceptions, and actions to align with that belief. The industrialist Henry Ford demonstrated this principle when he insisted his engineers create a V8 engine cast in a single block, something considered technically impossible at the time. When they protested that it couldn't be done, Ford simply replied, "Produce it anyway." His faith in the outcome overrode the apparent limitations, and his engineers eventually succeeded, revolutionizing the automobile industry. Faith doesn't operate in isolation from effort, it catalyzes it. It doesn't replace action, it directs it. As Hill noted, faith removes limitations. It expands your conception of what's possible, which in turn expands the actions you're willing to take and the persistence you're willing to maintain. This dimension of achievement is often overlooked in our rational age, dismissed as unscientific or irrational. Yet the evidence for its effectiveness is abundant in the lives of history's greatest achievers. They didn't just work hard, they combined their efforts with an unshakable faith in a specific outcome that seemed to bend reality toward their vision. What would change in your approach if you had absolute faith in the achievement of your definite chief aim? How would your actions differ if doubt were eliminated from your thinking? What limitations would disappear if you operated from complete certainty in your eventual success? These aren't hypothetical questions, they're practical considerations that determine whether you'll tap into this essential dimension of achievement or continue struggling against the headwinds of doubt. Knowledge without application remains forever potential. Planning without execution produces nothing. Intention without implementation changes nothing. The gap between knowing and doing is bridged by only one thing: immediate action. The final and perhaps most destructive mental error is the someday syndrome, the belief that there will be a more perfect moment in the future to begin. This thinking creates perpetual postponement under the guise of prudence. It convinces you that tomorrow, next week, or next month will provide better conditions than today. It's the subtle voice that whispers, "not yet," rather than shouting, "never," making it all the more dangerous because it preserves the illusion that you're still committed to your goals while indefinitely delaying their pursuit. Napoleon Hill identified this pattern in countless individuals who forever stood on the threshold of action without crossing it. They were always preparing, always planning, always positioning, but never performing. The truth he discovered was simple but profound. There is never a perfect moment to begin, and waiting for such a moment guarantees only one outcome: that your potential will remain forever unrealized. The most successful people Hill studied shared a common trait: they started before they felt ready. They took imperfect action with imperfect information under imperfect conditions. They understood that motion generates clarity, that action produces data, that implementation reveals the path forward in ways that contemplation never can. Edison didn't wait until he had the perfect filament design before building his first light bulb. He started testing materials immediately, learning from each failure. Ford didn't wait until he had perfected the assembly line concept. He implemented primitive versions and improved them through iteration. The Wright brothers didn't wait until their flying machine designs were flawless. They built and tested and rebuilt constantly. This principle faces its greatest test in this very moment. Not in some hypothetical future scenario, but right now, as you consider what action you will take in response to what you've learned. Will you file this knowledge away for future reference? Will you add it to your collection of interesting ideas? Or will you select one principle, just one, and implement it immediately through specific, concrete action? The choice isn't between perfect action and imperfect action. It's between imperfect action and no action at all. Between starting with what you have or waiting for what you lack. Between beginning where you are or dreaming about where you wish you were. And this choice, more than any other, will determine whether the insights you've gained transform your results or merely expand your knowledge. We've reached the moment of truth. Everything you've read has led to this critical junction where information must transform into implementation. The mental error that has held you back, mistaking knowledge for achievement, motion for action, planning for progress, has been exposed. The principles that can propel you forward, definite purpose, mastermind, alliance, unshakable faith, persistent action, have been revealed. What remains is the single most important factor in achievement: your decision. Not a decision to try. Not a decision to start someday. Not a decision to consider these ideas seriously. but a definite, irrevocable decision to transform your thinking and your actions beginning this very moment. As Napoleon Hill discovered, definiteness of decision always requires courage, sometimes very great courage. This courage isn't about facing external threats but internal ones: the fear of failure, the comfort of routine, the safety of potential rather than the vulnerability of performance. It requires abandoning the familiar territory of planning for the uncertain terrain of action. It demands releasing the identity of someone who will succeed someday for the identity of someone who is succeeding now. Through immediate implementation of proven principles, the transformation available to you isn't gradual or incremental. It's immediate and fundamental. It doesn't depend on external circumstances changing, but on your internal decision becoming irreversible. When Andrew Carnegie decided to become the world's leading steel producer, his commitment was so absolute that the outcome seemed inevitable, despite overwhelming obstacles. When Edison decided to create a practical electric light, his determination was so complete that thousands of failures could not deter him. When Ford decided to put America on wheels with affordable automobiles, his resolution was so definite that neither technical challenges nor financial setbacks could prevent his success. This same transformative decision stands before you now, not as an abstract concept, but as a specific moment in time. This moment when you choose between continuing the patterns that have produced your current results or embracing the principles that will generate new ones. Between the comfort of familiar limitations and the challenge of new possibilities. Between the person you've been and the person you're capable of becoming. The decision is yours alone. No one can make it for you. No one can implement it for you. No one can maintain it for you. But if you make it, truly make it, with the definiteness that Hill described, it will set in motion forces both within yourself and in your environment that will transform not just what you do, but who you are. What will you decide? Not tomorrow, not soon, but right now, in this moment. Will you continue to know without doing? To plan without executing? To intend without implementing? Or will you bridge the gap between potential and achievement with the only thing that ever has or ever will: immediate, persistent, faith-driven action toward a definite purpose? The quality of your life, your achievements, your impact, your legacy hangs in the balance of this decision. Choose wisely. Choose courageously. Choose now.